First story of the night, we're going to talk about the Bilderberg Group. The Bilderberg Group has been, happening every year since 1954, starting at the Bilderberg Hotel, and that's where it gets the name. Officially, this group doesn't have a name, or we don't know it. It's never been put to the public, leaked, communicated, anything like that. So we truly don't know what they call themselves, if they even have themselves, because maybe there's no need for a name, actually. Either way, whether they have a name or not, they are clearly an important, powerful group. And thankfully, people like Jim Tucker, who's now deceased, have been reporting on them since, I believe, the 90s, maybe even earlier. And there were some reports on them I found in the course of my research for the Pyramid of Power final episode, which is coming out in just the next couple of weeks and does include a significant section on the Bilderberg Group, including new information, which I have not seen reported elsewhere. In the course of my research, I was able to find articles from the 60s, maybe even a little earlier, on the Bilderberg Group in European media. The American media, I think the first time it gets mentioned is like the 70s. But of course, these were very sparing and in passing. If you were to do research and find all of the newspaper reporting on the Bilderberg Group prior to, say, the 2000s or mid-2000s, you would only find, I would say, 10 or less articles, if that. That might be asking too much from the American media. And that was because, though the group is more well-known now in 2005, and they even have a website, for the most of their history, they have been truly a very secretive group. People would only every now and then kind of figure out which hotels they were going to be meeting up in. And then those who did get that inside information would try to show up and ask questions of the attendees, typically with very little success. And then, of course, in the YouTube era, in the the post 9/11 era, the internet era, people have gotten more information and started to actually show up. There have been protests organized outside of Bilderberg Group meetings, including by Alex Jones back in the 2010s and mid 2000s. And sometimes there was hundreds of people that would show up to this. Now, these days, there's not too many people going. Dan Dix of Press for Truth in Canada did go this year. We're going to show one of his videos in just a moment. But my point is that the Bilderberg Group is not necessarily new, but the even slight coverage of them is relatively new. So let's go ahead and take a look at what happened in the 2025 meeting, because I tweeted this last week, and I even think I talked about this on the previous show, that as the secretive Bilderberg Group prepares to meet this coming week, it's important to remember that Alex Karp and Peter Thiel, founders of Palantir, are both steering committee members of the group. Of course, Alex Karp, Peter Thiel, Palantir becoming more and more household names as people recognize that this is part of the technocracy. And as I've been reporting since prior to the election, there was a very heavy Peter Thiel influence in the Trump's first administration and the second one, and that there's at least 15, maybe 20 people who are former employees of Peter Thiel or worked for Palantir, connected to that Thielverse, as they say, in one way or another. And that is not something you really hearing people discuss in the context of the Bilderberg Group, which is why, let me just go ahead and jump ahead of myself for a moment, why the fact that Dan Dix actually did confront Peter Thiel about Palantir, Jeffrey Epstein, and Big Brother surveillance system. This is his video. I'm just going to play the clip. You won't hear the audio, but I will include this in the show notes. You can find it over at pressfortruth.ca and just search Peter Thiel. And Dan just straight up follows him through the streets of, where were they? I think they were in Stockholm this year. And just pegging him with questions about Palantir, his connection to Jeffrey Epstein, all kinds of different things like that, which is a beautiful thing to see. We need more of these types of conversations. I've written articles about this and the importance of confronting powerful officials and how the impact that has and why that's a moral win, even if you don't really get an answer. So nevertheless, that's what I think is one of the big pieces of the puzzle here, is the fact that the Bilderberg Group is, I think, more entrenched in the U.S. White House than they probably have ever been. Not to say they've never been, of course. We know that the Bilderberg Group has been an influential organization, institution, but I think the level at which they have penetrated the White House, as the World Economic Forum says they do about the cabinets, is unprecedented, I think, here. And there, as I say here in this tweet, there's not one single person in the mainstream media or the podcasting space who has spoken with Alex Karp or Peter Thiel that even brings up the Bilderberg Group. I also pointed out that Michael Kratsios, who's Trump's Office of the White House, Director of the White House of Office of Science and Technology, that he was attending Bilderberg. You can see his name here listed, USA, Director, White House Office, Science and Technology Policy. and you can even see Alex Karp's name up there too, CEO of Palantir Technology. And this is the same guy that I reported in my articles as well as in my mini documentary on Donald Trump, Peter Thiel, and the technocracy, that Michael Kratsios, prior to being at the White House's Office of Science and Technology, has worked for two of Peter Thiel's funds, Thiel Capital and Clarium. So again, a Peter Thiel connected person put into the position of the White House, now attending the Bilderberg Group. Why is there not more discussion of this? Let's get back to that question in just a moment, but let's look at the mainstream. If I search Bilderberg Sweden, the only thing that pops up, okay, I got a Reuters article, 6 paragraphs, and this one is, I think, interesting. We'll pull this one up. The Guardian, which is Charlie Skelton. You can always count on Charlie Skelton, which The Guardian, I think, is somewhat mainstream. They're kind of on that edge. I guess you could call them mainstream. But Charlie Skelton has worked there for years, and he always writes about the Bilderberg Group. Okay, and then you got the Daily Mail, which sometimes does report important news, but most people look at it as kind of like tabloid. World's most secret society meets in Sweden as tensions between Europe and Trump reach boiling point. RBC Ukraine, secret meeting to be held in Sweden to discuss future of Ukraine. A few articles from small outlets, not, this isn't the New York Times. This isn't, there's Rebel News, so there's some independent media, but really there's no coverage of this. This is what we call a blackout here. So check out this Reuters article though. At the end, it says this: how much impact groups like Bilderberg actually have is hard to judge, according to Christina Garsten, professor at the Swedish Collegium for Advanced Studies, who studies transnational think tanks. They aim to shape broad political and corporate agendas, but if they are seen as having too much influence, they can be accused of being anti-democratic. She says, quote, it's there that conspiracies can flower in that space of secrecy. She dismissed the belief held by some groups that the Bilderberg Group made up a shadowy world government. I think it's very much exaggerated. It's just funny that they have to, even in this like 6-paragraph thing here, 7, 8 lines, not very long at all, they feel the need to make sure to bring in an expert who says those claims of being a shadowy conspiracy are not true. Don't worry about that. There's nothing to see here. It's a little bit exaggerated. Nevertheless, like I said, Michael Kratsios, Peter Thiel acolyte, White House Director of Office of Science and Technology Policy, attending the Bilderberg Group, and not a mention from independent media for the most part, and definitely not a mention from the Trump world and from MAGA world over on Rumble, that's also funded by Peter Thiel. And this reminds me of a video I did a few years back. This is called "The Silence from InfoWars is Deafening" from 2016. It's an article, a video I did going through and showing in Trump's first year in office how he had all these connections. Like, for example, former governor of Texas, Rick Perry, who was also a Bilderberg attendee, he named him as the Department of Energy director. And I was showing here how at one point InfoWars, I pulled up this article here titled "Bilderberg approved Perry to become presidential frontrunner" from like 2012 or something. At that point, they were calling out Rick Perry for being associated with the Bilderberg Group. And then once he gets named to head of Department of Energy, and InfoWars even reported on it, Texas, Trump names Rick Perry to head Department of Energy. There's no mention in there at all of his connection to the Bilderberg Group. And the same thing, Trump to name Exxon CEO Rex Tillerson. Rex Tillerson's also got some shady things going on. And Jones mentioned nothing about it. So the point was to show how InfoWars, along with other independent media, have gone silent. And so I just wanted to do sort of a part 2 of this article before we wrap up this segment to show how some people really have turned, like they've just changed. Where Alex Jones used to teach people about the left-right paradigm and used to go to the Bilderberg Group and used to call it out. And I know he's talked about it this year. All his fans are telling me, Derrick, he did talk about it. He even mentioned Peter Thiel, but he doesn't get into any of the details. He doesn't mention what I just mentioned, that there is literally somebody in Trump's White House who is attending the Bilderberg Group, and that the man who is partnered with the Trump administration in numerous ways, Peter Thiel and Alex Karp, who founded Palantir, which Jones has tried to downplay it, as I'll show you in just a moment. He doesn't mention any of that stuff. He just says, okay, well, yeah, Bilderberg Group's happening, and I'll show you. In fact, I think they have some fake news and sort of a misdirect, just some exclusive story from I don't know. We'll get into that in just a moment. But so that's what I showed back in 2016. Now let's go to Infowars.com right now. I searched Bilderberg Group right here. You can see Bilderberg search results. And what did they have 9 days ago? Guardian. This is talking about Charlie Skelton's article that we just went over. They did mention that depopulation was on the Bilderberg 2025 agenda, which was very odd, depopulation and migration. And then they even did a little article about Dan Dix confronting Peter Thiel. Right here, you're setting up a Big Brother surveillance system. Journalist confronts Peter Thiel. I'll show you that in just a moment. They did 71st Bilderberg meeting, attendees revealed. Okay, and then 5 months ago, 10 months ago, it gets older, right? So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces on there, and two of them are just, you know, basic information about the attendees and the topics, which is public knowledge, and one of them is just a reprinting of The Guardian. So the only ones that are different is Dan Dix's confrontation of Peter Thiel, which is basically a copy and aggregate from his website, and then this so-called exclusive story. And this is the one I want to look at here. This exclusive. Why won't you open up for me? Let me see if I can get that to open up in just a moment. But it's titled "Exclusive Leak from Bilderberg. Globalists see Trump as their number one enemy." Let me see if I got this one pulled up. Exclusive. So you see here, InfoWars has this claimed exclusive, and this is kind of sad for me. I'll get into this. Bilderberg, globalists see Trump as their number one enemy and carrying out their transhumanist one world government agenda. Bilderberg leak. Bilderberg Group expert Daniel Echelon, who I have actually reached out to and I did interview for the Pyramid of Power, but he didn't make the final cut, namely because, you know, he just didn't really give any answer that I thought was going to be valuable for what we're doing. And that does include that I think Daniel has, unfortunately, although he was one of the first whistleblowers and experts on the Bilderberg Group, seems to kind of have it in his head that Trump is a good guy. And that's basically what he's telling Alex Jones here. And Alex Jones is reporting that as an exclusive leak from Bilderberg. There's no leak here. I mean, Daniel may have claimed he had something. And, you know, if he's claiming he's got, you know, sources within Bilderberg, you can decide if you want to believe him. But to me, it's just interesting that this just shows that the only really kind of discussion of Bilderberg that Jones will do is an exclusive leak, making it like the Bilderberg is marked President Trump for destruction, designating him the number one threat to the New World Order scheme. And it's this interview with Daniel. That's Daniel Echelon right there on the screen. Check out further analysis on this during Echelon's recent interview on the Alex Jones Show. Exclusive prediction. If he doesn't destroy the NW first, the globalists will kill President Trump to demonstrate what happens when you stand up to their system, warns top political researcher. That's Daniel Echelon, right? So that's pretty much the reporting that InfoWars did on that. Now let's go here to the one on Peter Thiel. Again, this is Dan Dix confronting Peter Thiel, and it's just kind of a summary of what happened. Now, check this out, though. This is interesting because at the bottom it says update. They felt the need to add this little addendum here, which I think is kind of funny. Update. Alex Jones has filed numerous reports on how the AI surveillance control grid feared to be coming is already here and in place, and how Palantir hysteria is mainly being raised by the legacy media and corporate leftists like Google, who are upset they won't be the AI company chosen for government contracts or to control the data infrastructure. So he tries to paint opposition to Palantir as hysteria, and that it's only coming from the legacy media. So this is because one of the big articles that made waves a couple weeks ago was from the New York Times. But people like myself and others in the independent media have been talking about Palantir for quite some time. And I'm sure, again, if we search Palantir on InfoWars, we'll probably find articles from years ago when they were talking about it. But now it's not cool because Trump's doing it, so you got to defend him at all costs. So it's hysteria to call out Palantir, and this is mainly by legacy media and corporate leftists who are just mad that they're not going to get AI contracts. And I just think that's funny that they put that in as an update. It's like they felt the need to sort of preempt any criticism from people like myself, because it's like, okay, they want to report on Bilderberg, but they also recognize that there's enough controversy out there where people are calling out Alex Jones for just losing his way. So I still do think Bilderberg is important. I think I probably did a video years ago called "Does Bilderberg Even Matter?" Actually, let's just check that. Let's do it live. And the point of that video, which I will include in the show notes, was not to say that Bilderberg has no place for discussion. I haven't listened to the video in years, but I do remember my general sentiment, and that was that we shouldn't get obsessed with them, right? Like, I do think it's important to talk about them. I do think that they are playing a role in the bigger picture of things, and this is why they are going. There's a section in them on the Pyramid of Power about the Bilderberg Group. But yeah, this is so May 2019. I did at Bilderberg that year. So 6 years ago, does Bilderberg still matter? Breaking down the latest 2019 conference and asking, does it still matter? And I do think it does. I do think it does matter, even if the point is we shouldn't allow obsession with the so-called elite and these people to make it where we don't actually take concrete steps in our lives to empower ourselves. That's the point. As a journalist, I do think it matters, and that I want to contribute to talking about them when the corporate media and most of the independent media have kind of lost their way or sold out, like, or just don't even bother talking about it. Well, then we're going to be the ones to talk about it. So I still do think it does matter, and I will continue to talk about this as long as I can. And I hope in the coming years to make it to one of the Bilderberg meetings, because, man, Dan Dix, you did a great job. I wish I was the one that was there to question Peter Thiel right there with you. And I'm thankful to everybody who's out there doing that work. It's important. It takes time. It takes money. It takes energy. But somebody has to shine a light on what's going on with the Bilderberg Group. And I do think they're not going away necessarily. And I also want to say this, and you'll find out more in the final episodes of the Pyramid of Power. I don't think the Bilderberg Group is the top of the pyramid per se. I think they're the representatives, one of the final roundtable groups representing the true ruling class. And I'll talk about who that is in the final episodes of the Pyramid of Power.
Since 2012, the Conscious Resistance Network has been an independent media organization focused on empowering individuals through education, philosophy, health, and community organizing. We work to create a world where corporate and state power do not rule over the lives of free human beings. Our motto is leading by example and helping others in their pursuit of freedom. Visit theconsciousresistance.com to find our articles, documentaries, interviews, podcasts, books, and more. Remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free.